Alright guys, so we went over JavaScript. Now I want to go over jQuery, which is still JavaScript. It's just a clump of JavaScript, which is called a library. There's quite a few different JavaScript libraries. Ajax is another one, MooTools. There's a bunch of them out there, but jQuery is, I'd say, by far the most popular. So what is jQuery? As I just said, jQuery is a multi-browser JavaScript library. So jQuery can be used in IE, Chrome, Firefox, all the browsers, all the major modern browsers. And it's basically nothing more than a bunch of JavaScript code. It's actually just one file. If you want to use jQuery, you have to include the file. And if you look at the jQuery file, it's usually just a bunch of meshed up code that is impossible to read, the compressed version at least. You can also get the version where there's comments and kind of explains what things do, but if you want speed, then you'd probably use the compressed version. jQuery makes it easy to navigate a document and select DOM elements. Now DOM stands for Document Object Model, and all the elements in a website and browser are DOM elements. The body tag, an H1 tag, the browser window itself, everything. So jQuery allows you to maneuver around the DOM and manipulate certain elements. It handles events effectively, so clicking, hovering, mouse up, mouse down, keyboard strokes, all kinds of events. We can easily do different things with jQuery events. You can use jQuery to create plugins on top of the JavaScript library as well. So what can we do with jQuery? Just like with JavaScript, there's a ton of things we can do. Some of the more popular functions that jQuery is used for are effects and animation. So you see now a lot of the websites nowadays have some kind of slider or slideshow or tab animation on their home page, maybe to showcase their new products or services, and a lot of times those are built with jQuery. jQuery is used to handle events, so clicks, toggles, hovers, mouse up and down, scrolling. We can do all different kinds of things with events. Feature detection. So if we want to, let's say, if we want to use the HTML5 geolocation feature, we can use jQuery to see if that browser can actually handle that or support that feature. And as I said, jQuery is used to manipulate the document object model. We can use jQuery along with Ajax and build Ajax applications. And there's just a ton of other stuff that you can do with jQuery. So to use jQuery, like I said, it's basically just one file, and you have to include that in your text, in your HTML file. So we would do that in the head tag of the HTML document. Now, what we would do, there's a couple things we can do. The first would be to go to jquery.com, and I think it's .com or .org, and download the actual file, jQuery, and name it. You can name it anything you want. In this example, we're calling it jquery.js. So that file has all the jQuery code in it, and we're putting that on our server and including it. Another way we can do this is to use what's called a CDN, and a CDN it's a document or a library hosted by another service such as jQuery or Google, which is a very popular one. And this doesn't require us to download any code or put any code on our server. All we need to do is throw this script tag in there, which points to the library. So this is the quicker way of doing it. If you're using your local host and you're not actually on the internet, then I'd suggest using this, because sometimes this won't work. You can see all of Google's libraries at this link here. at the developer site. There's jQuery, and there's a whole bunch of other stuff you can check out. Okay, so the document ready handler. Now, I'm just going to read this. When we include our external jQuery scripts, or we add jQuery to the head area, we need to first check if the document is ready. If we don't, then our jQuery code will run before the rest of the code in which we are trying to use or modify. And we can do this with the following syntax. So what this is saying is that we want our code, our jQuery, to run after the website or the document loads, because if it calls our jQuery code before any HTML, it's not, obviously that's not going to work. So this is what we do. We just use this the $, which is just jQuery. It stands for jQuery in general, and we're taking the document, and when it's ready, so this .ready, when it's ready, we want to run this function, and everything that we want to do goes in that function. Alright, so I hope that that's understandable. Selecting elements. One of the reasons jQuery is so powerful is that we can grab virtually anything in the DOM or on the website, the browser, whatever you want to call it, and we do this with selectors. And a selector is a jQuery or a $, and then some parentheses with whatever you want to grab in the middle. So this, for instance, will grab all div tags on the page. Alright, so if you want to zero in on a certain div, then you can give it an ID, and you can do it this way. So this here will actually select only the div with the ID of my div. And it's not just divs, you can get paragraphs. So this here would grab the paragraph with the class of my class. You can grab form elements, span tags, pretty much anything at all. And that's what makes this so powerful. When you're using plain JavaScript, it's not that easy to grab something with a class name. You can use the getElementById to grab something with an ID, but if it doesn't have an ID, then it's a little more complicated in Java, just using plain JavaScript. jQuery makes it very easy to get whatever we want. Okay, so jQuery actions or methods or whatever you want to call them. Once we grab something with a selector, like we just saw, we can do things to it, such as call an action. I have a couple examples of actions here. The first one we have is the add class action, and all that does is add a class to whatever we're selecting. So in this example, we're taking all div tags and we're adding a class of my class. Okay, so this is going to do this to all div tags. This here, the CSS action, will let us add CSS style to an element. So we can just on the fly add CSS to an element. So we're grabbing something with an ID of my class, and we're just making the color red. We can get all of the HTML inside of an element using .html. So let's say here we're creating a variable called myElement, and I probably should have mentioned that you can create variables and arrays and all that just like we did in JavaScript when you're dealing with jQuery. So we're creating a variable which is equal to the element with the ID of myElement, and the .html is going to actually give us all of everything that's in that ID, that's in that element. Okay, so whether it's a paragraph or images, a whole page, whatever it is, this is going to put all the HTML into this one variable, and then we can use that to do certain things. jQuery events. Like I said, jQuery is very good at handling different kinds of events, and here we can see an example. We're seeing all the A tags. Okay, so we know that an A tag is a link, so we're saying all the links when we click on it, when we click on a link, we're going to run this function, which there's nothing here because this is just an example, but we could do, let's say, like we just saw, the add class action. We could add a class to all the links when they're clicked if we wanted to do that. Some other events include blur, focus, hover, key down, load, and if you want to go to the jQuery website, you can see all the events that we can deal with. Show hide elements is another great use of jQuery. We can use the hide and show action. So here we're grabbing something with the ID of my element and we're going to hide it, and once it's hidden it's going to do whatever we put here. Okay. Same thing here, we're just showing it. So do something once the element is shown. Here we're using toggle, which basically changes from hide to show as you click. So that's what toggle does. Animations. We can add animations to elements with jQuery. Here's an example. So we're saying the ID, the element with the ID of my element, we're going to say slide down. So that's going to make something slide down, and that takes a parameter, or a few parameters, the first being the speed. We can use a numeric value, or we can actually use these keywords, slow, fast, and then the next parameter is the actual function that we want to happen when the slide is finished. And here we have the same thing, except it's slide up, and we also have slide toggle. So that's it for this section. I understand that this is a lot of information crammed into one video and document, but it'll get easier as we go along and we actually use these techniques. So that's it for this section, and I'll see you in the next.